For Halloween last year, I painted a combination baggage coach. And this thing has been on my mind. I'm proud of how it turned out, but more importantly, having a railroad name on a car usually means I want to make a full railroad at some point. So, over the last year, my plans for Halloween have kind of spiraled out of control. Not to say I think they're bad plans. I do like the idea of a micromodel railroad with a Halloween theme to it. But if I really wanted to have a chance at finishing this on time, I should have started in August at the latest, and that's not to mention that I had a vacation last month that would have gotten in the way. But I can still do something. This year, let's give the Combine a small family to join. Project 1 was the Combine, so I guess this will be next in line. Project 2, a slightly spooked up tank car. I happened to have this Ohio River and Western tanker lying around. I was originally going to add it to my main fleet, but I don't really have an oil industry, and I already have 2 tank cars for my railroad. I really don't need a third. So, into the project it goes. The first step to any repaint like this is disassembly. I was expecting this to go fast, as most Bachmann cars are held together just by the screws that hold the trucks in place. However, their tank cars have a bit more structure to them. I had to be a little more careful with the screws holding down the straps because they were so small, and I had to get them out before I could remove the underframe of the car, but aside from that, it was really just a couple of extra screws. It hardly took me 3 minutes to do. Since I wanted to change the color of the car to give it a more spooky appearance, next came spray painting. My father, as usual, helped with this. We started with a coat of primer on the sides of the car deck. We only needed to do the sides. You see, I wanted to paint the whole thing black, but painting over white letters with pure black would make it harder to hide them in the final product, thanks to the contrast between the original and the new colors. So, we started by painting the letters with gray primer first, as an in-between, and then we painted the whole thing black. For the tank itself, we also primered it, but the final color I went for was Badger Model Flex Grimy Black, which was basically the same tone of gray as the primer that we used. With the base colors in place, the rest of the project was just adding texture. For the deck of the car, I once again used Grimy Black, but this time dry brushing it on to highlight the wood grain texture in the plastic. However, I failed to make the brush dry enough and wound up instead using my finger to spread the paint out in uneven patterns. The effect isn't really as good as dry brushing, but I still rather like how it turned out. Next, I tried to add some oil stain to the tank. I honestly didn't know how to do this, and I probably should have spent more time learning online, but I instead rushed in and just added black wash to the dome and areas beneath it. I think that turned out alright. I followed this up by adding some weathering to the top of the car. A lot of tankers seem to have lighter stains across them, and I tried to mimic that using pan pastels. I think the color that I wound up using was a little too close in tone to the base of the car to be all that noticeable, but it still adds some nice texture even if it's hard to really notice. I also added a couple of rust stains to the top. The little bits of orange helped to add some color to the otherwise grayscale car. Speaking of grayscale, however, I decided to touch up the ladder, railings, grab irons, and tank supports in black, just to try to make them stick out a little bit from the base tank car. It's not much, but like the rust, it keeps the car from being just gray, you know? At this point, the car was basically done. Quick project, eh? Funnily enough, it's harder to build things than to destroy them. Screwing everything back in place took about twice as long as it did to take it all apart in the first place. But with the car assembled, I could see what last little details I wanted to change, that I wanted to perfect. Some of the weathering on the top of the car got damaged while I was painting the supports. I should have paid a little more attention to how I was holding the tank. It wasn't that hard to touch it up, though. This car has never had a handbrake. It was missing when I bought it, but I had a couple of spares from the 18-foot flat car kits that I built for the Little Loop Railroad, so I got one of those and put it in place. Once I got the handbrake in place, however, I realized that black just wasn't the right color for it. Instead, I should go for one of my personal favorites. Red. It's like blood, right? Perfect for Halloween. So, I grabbed myself one of my favorite colors, Badger Model Flex Dark Tuscan Oxide Red, and touched up the handbrake, footsteps, and a couple of grab irons. Lastly, off camera, I glued on a detail to the dome that had broken off a long time ago. The only part that's really missing at this point is lettering. This is a Heartless and Coin River car, right? Well, I haven't actually decided what number I want to use on this just yet. I'll probably better know when I finished another freight car or two. Aside from needing to add that, however, I think this car turned out quite nice. It also meets the stipulation that I added last year, where the car is perfect for a Halloween environment, but outside of Halloween, it still feels like a fairly normal freight car. Sure, it's a stylized car, but if I were to take this to a train show and put it on a club layout, I don't think anybody would object on the grounds of it being too Halloween-y. This was a short but sweet project, a nice change of pace from what I've been doing this last month, and I'm really happy with the results. Next week, however, we'll more than double the amount of cars in the fleet. Kind of. There's definitely an asterisk there, but you'll just have to find out why next time. See you then. Cheers, folks.